The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
So today is the Singapore summit. President Donald Trump is meeting with North Korean President Kim Jong-un, or as Fox News commentator Abby Huntsman put it, the two dictators meet.
As we await this historic summit with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Anthony, talk to us about this moment. I mean, this is history. We are living, regardless of what happens in that meeting between the two dictators, what we are seeing right now, this is history.
The truth will come out when you least expect it. But today's summit is important. I do hope that they are successful. And I don't think that that should be a profound statement. I mean, I think anyone who actually is in this thing that we all do in politics as a commentator or in politics as merely a bystander, I think all of us are in this, or should rather be in this, for the cause of peace. And so the potential for peace is significant, and therefore I do hope Donald Trump is successful. However, Donald Trump is not going to let down liberals. I do believe that those people who want him to fail because he's Donald Trump, which is understandable, like that. I'm not casting disdain at those people who want him to fail because he's Donald Trump. I get it. I get the sentiment. I'm not one of those people, but I don't think Donald Trump is going to let them down because he has made it clear that he has no preparations for this. He's just going to kind of wing it and go with it. And because, we don't have the infrastructure currently in terms of diplomats to actually facilitate the many layers of negotiations that have to take place. This is not merely a conversation, or rather, this is not merely something that can be resolved as a conversation between two men. Or two individuals. You have a multitude of issues, very complicated negotiations that have to take place. And on the United States end, we don't have ambassadors in many key positions. We don't have State Department officials in many key positions. And yet we're going in by the seat of our pants to negotiate something that could be potentially great, but then it could also be potentially disastrous.
In light of how many flimsy agreements the United States has made in previous years, this president will ensure that no potential agreement will fail to adequately address the North Korean threat. The ultimate objective we seek from diplomacy with North Korea has not changed. The complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korea Peninsula is the only outcome that the United States will accept. Sanctions will remain until North Korea completely and verifiably eliminates its weapons of mass destruction programs. If diplomacy does not move in the right direction, and we are hopeful that it will continue to do so, those measures will increase. President Trump recognizes Chairman Kim's desire for security and is prepared to ensure that a North Korea free of weapons of mass destruction is also a secure North Korea.
That was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in a press conference this morning, or this in Singapore time, the afternoon, this morning for us, outlining some of the pitfalls, or not really outlining. I want to say this. Let me say that again. He is demonstrating the potential pitfalls. There's always been the potential that North Korea was not going to cooperate with anything that the United States asks or demands. That's not a potential pitfall. That's not new. We knew that. The potential pitfall that he's demonstrating is their motivation and the way that they are presenting this as a political issue, which all things are political, yes, but they're presenting this as their motivation being to outdo President Obama's Iranian nuclear deal. And with that type of motivation going in, coupled with a president who did no preparation, coupled with the State Department that is still barren, with so many missing employees and so many missing statesmen and diplomats, there are so many potential pitfalls that go beyond North Korea saying, no, we don't want this deal. There's potential for a lot of hiccups along the way that very well may stop the deal, even though both sides may want the deal. So there's hurdles, there's pitfalls. We'll see. The time for the summit is actually 9 a.m. Eastern time. I'm recording this pretty early in the morning because I do believe that we won't get many details early. We'll probably have some sound, some photo ops, a lot of pomp and circumstance, a lot of talk about history. But I want to discuss this tomorrow when we have a more robust breakdown of what is actually said in the meeting in the Singapore summit.
It would be with regret, but it would be with absolute certainty and firmness that we move forward with retaliatory measures on July 1st, applying equivalent tariffs to the ones that the Americans have unjustly applied to us. I have made it very clear to the President that it is not something we relish doing, but it is something that we absolutely will do, because Canadians, we're polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
What timeline? I mean, what world have we fallen into where we are now at odds with Canada over milk, over dairy? And granted, I know that it's not really about dairy. I'm not quite sure what it's about yet. I don't think we're going to understand the insanity that is Donald Trump's trade wars desires, his desire for a trade war, until we are able to do a postmortem of his presidency with financial documents. My suspicion is that it has something to do with his businesses, a combination of his businesses, his business interests, and his ego. I am starting to believe some of the liberal hype in that Donald Trump genuinely is trying to realign the world order in favor of Vladimir Putin, in favor of Russia. I mean, you can only ignore it for so long. You can dismiss it because it's coming from MSNBC. You can dismiss it because it's coming from Democrats and liberals and all you. But at some point, you've got to slow down and say, the President of the United States is realigning the world order right before our eyes. We are now at odds with Germany, the UK, with Canada, and we are making allegiances. Well, not allegiances. That's hyperbole, but we are making overtures on behalf of Russia. Now, ostensibly, it's fine for us to have good relations with Russia. I only say ostensibly because the question that matters is at what cost, at what price. So I'm not saying this to say that, we're in league with Russia and that's a bad thing inherently. But you cannot say that it's a good thing inherently. You have to ask, what is the cost? What is the price? And I'm not sure how much of this actually ties into the wedge that Donald Trump is willingly placing, very unnecessarily so, between us and our closest allies and our biggest trade partners. And doing it based on the one detail, a loophole in NAFTA that allowed Canada to engage in protectionist policies to protect their dairy industry, just like we protect industries here. Look at what we do with our sugar industry and so many others. But they found this one little loophole, which represents a minuscule portion of the trade. I think maybe like less than 1% of our trade with Canada is based on the dairy loophole that Donald Trump keeps talking about, the Republicans keep talking about, that his sycophants talk about, that 270% tariff. They're like, they keep mentioning that as if that's the standard, but it represents less than 1% of our trade with Canada. And it represents It represents Canada engaging in protectionist policies for their dairy industry, just like we do with various industries. But the overwhelming amount of trade between us, it's actually in favor of the United States. I mean, the trade deficit is in favor of the United States. And it varies. It varies from cycle to cycle, from year to year. But there are no tremendous tariffs that Canada is placing on the United States. And so the United States, through Donald Trump, is creating a problem that did not exist. He's not fixing, mind you, he's not fixing the problem with NAFTA that most progressives see, that people who lost their jobs because industries shut down, because free trade has, clearly there are volumes and volumes of books and literature and commentary about the perils of free trade for your economy, for your local labor. But this is not what Donald Trump is addressing. And it's a brilliant play. I have to give him credit. It's a brilliant play. We don't quite know why he's doing this yet, because we don't have access to his tax returns. I firmly believe that this is all based on business interest or as personal favors to friends. He's probably got a friend in the dairy industry. And the only reason this industry, this issue came up is because his close and personal friend in the dairy industry went to him like Kim Kardashian did, like Sylvester Stallone did. And he was like, you know what? We're going to do something about it. And therefore, this became a preeminent issue that he's willing to put us at odds with our biggest ally, trade partner, at least. So those are harsh words from, very strong words from Justin Trudeau that I played. And the president's response was what you would expect from Donald Trump. Nothing less, and most certainly nothing more, nothing magnanimous. He said this on the 9th of June. He said on Twitter, quote, based on Justin's false statements at his news conference and the fact that Canada is charging massive tariffs to our U.S. farmers, workers, and companies, I have instructed our U.S. representatives not to endorse the communique as we look at tariffs and on automobiles flooding the U.S. market. And this is the clincher. He said this, quote, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada acted so meek and mild during the G7 meetings, only to give a news conference after I left saying that, quote, U.S. tariffs were kind of insulting and he will, quote, not be pushed around. Very dishonest and weak. Our tariffs are in response to his of 270% on dairy. Now, I don't believe Justin Trudeau is going to respond in kind and escalate this unnecessarily so with more bellicose language and insults. That's just not the Canadian style. This reply from Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland is pretty much what you could expect from a Canadian who has been insulted.
Canada does not believe that ad hominem attacks are a particularly appropriate or useful way to conduct our relations with other countries. For me, what is insulting and what I object to very strongly is the illegal and unjustified imposition of tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. The national security pretext is absurd and, frankly, insulting to Canadians, the closest and strongest ally the United States has had. We can't pose a security threat to the United States, and I know that Americans understand that. And our retaliatory tariffs will come into effect, perfectly reciprocal, perfectly measured, a dollar-for-dollar response on July 1st, which is Canada Day, perhaps not inappropriate.
I mean, family, you cannot get a more comprehensive clapback in a more polite tone than this. I mean, good Lord. When you compare, this is Canada's response to Donald Trump, basically insulting their leader, right? Now listen to how the United States or rather Donald Trump's legion, responded to Justin Trudeau simply saying that we're going to retaliate with tariffs of our own.
But what did he say that was so offensive? President Trump accused him of lying.
Well, he holds a press conference, and he said the U.S. is insulting. He said that Canada has to stand up for itself. He says that we are the problem with tariffs. What the non-factual part of this was they have enormous tariffs. I mean, they have tariffs on certain dairy and food products of a 295%. He was polarizing. You know, here's the thing. I mean, he really kind of stabbed us in the back. He really actually, you know what? He did a great disservice to the whole G7. He betrayed.
Trudeau did.
Yes, he did.
I mean, notwithstanding the fact that Larry Kudlow was hammered. He sounded so drunk there. But look, I mean, he was betrayed and, oh, God, he held a press conference. God forbid. Oh, no, he held a press conference. You know, the absurdity of it. But that's not even the most ridiculous response. Listen to this one.
Question, Mr. Navarro, is that really how we want to deal with our second biggest trading partner?
Chris, there's a special place in hell for any foreign leader that engages in bad faith diplomacy with President Donald J. Trump and then tries to stab him in the back on the way out the door. And that's what bad faith Justin Trudeau did with that stunt press conference. That's what weak, dishonest Justin Trudeau did. And that comes right from Air Force One. And I'll tell you this, to my friends in Canada, that was one of the worst political miscalculations of a Canadian leader in modern Canadian history.
I mean, good God, listen to the psychosis that is running through the heads, the minds of people who serve as assistants to the presidents and counselors and advisors to the president, and the psychosis that's running through the minds of people who are feeding the masses through Fox News, right? These are the talking points that are being fed. This is the framework that's being introduced to a large portion of our population, that somehow that it is more offensive. It is damning. It is detrimental to our ties between nations for someone to dare challenge Donald J. Trump, not challenge the United States, mind you. Not challenge or threaten our national security, mind you. Not anything that would legitimately cause an escalation in hostilities, even if they're just spoken hostilities. No, it's that someone had the nerve to challenge Donald J. Trump. And as a result of that, there is a special place in hell, Peter Navarro says on Fox News. And it got worse. It increasingly got worse as he continued to talk. Now he's saying that this is the biggest political miscalculation of a Canadian leader in modern history. What does that mean, Peter? What are you saying? That there's going to be an escalation from here? That the fact that this man had the nerve to challenge a ridiculous policy from the Trump administration? Hands down, just downright ridiculous, to the benefit of who? We won't know that until we get Donald Trump's tax returns. We won't know that until we have a postmortem of this entire administration, until we see who are the people who have been communicating with the president of the United States, until we get the emails, so we know, if we ever get the emails, so that we can actually know why we are making an enemy out of Canada over milk. We are literally making an enemy out of Canada over one single tariff that they have on one category of food, of goods, that represents about 1% of our total trade with Canada, which is being presented to the world as the preeminent problem that we have. And yet we're making an enemy out of an ally. Where there's smoke, eventually you're going to have to say fire, right? You can't look around and say smoke, 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 and never conclude that there's fire. Donald Trump is realigning the world order right before our eyes. And it's either to the benefit of his personal profit, to the benefit of his ego, to the benefit of some of his friends, or to the benefit of Vladimir Putin. And so here we are now in a conversation about the reality of Donald Trump in a single administration potentially realigning the world order. And you can't have that conversation without, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk. I'm doing my best not to engage in arguments with the left, but I've also learned when you see stupid, speak on it before it metastasizes. So, and let me also give this preface. I haven't seen this argument in a lot of places, so I'm not making a sweeping statement that this is something that's being said by the left. All right. We have that established. Okay. So when I made comments on Twitter about this realignment that Donald Trump is engaging in, all by himself within one administration, undermining the world order of the post-war era, the last 70 years in one administration via Twitter, I got an array of comments that really do nestle nicely inside of leftists thinking, but I don't know if people have carried this to the logical conclusion or considered all the ramifications. The sentiment, all the preludes aside, the sentiment is this: fine, let him destroy the world order. Let him destroy. I mean, of course, world order already has a nefarious connotation, like the world order, right? But they're like, well, it's fine. It's been a bad 70 years. So just why do we care? And there's so many things that go into that I probably could do a 10-hour episode just on the problem of just thinking nothing of major geopolitical changes without really thinking it through. Just kind of celebrating, it's going to be the end of imperialism. It's over. Donald Trump is going to destroy imperialism with his idiocy. So why are we complaining? Well, let's start with this. How do you convince, I think people have convinced themselves that the current world order is so bad that potential war to change it is preferred to living in what we currently have. I think people have really convinced themselves that it is a worthwhile endeavor. And when I mean a handful, a very small fraction, but I've learned my lesson. I can't be silent when I see stupid stuff, because it metastasizes, it grows like a cancer. And then you have an entire contingency of people who represent, thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who agree with them. So, yes, I have to address it. Like, people really believe that a systems level war, and what do I mean by that? I mean a global war. This current world order, I've said this on a podcast before, so this should not be a shocking or controversial statement, but this current world order is not going down without a brutal fight. You're not going to just simply destroy the post-war order and think that it's going to happen peacefully. Even if you think it's going to happen, even if you think we could rearrange this through economic terms, and mind you, I'm not saying that we should not change it. I'm just saying, have you thought this through? Do you know how many millions of people could die in an economic shift, like in economic sanctions? We complain about and we rightfully so point out how many millions of people die as a result of our sanctions. Either through a hot war or through economic sanctions or a complete collapse of the system, we are literally talking about the death of millions, potentially billions. And to just kind of brush that aside as, Donald Trump is just, well, let me finish that mocking I was doing, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Donald Trump is, he's an idiot, but he's undoing the world order of the post-war period. So, it's fine. Why are we upset about it? Because there exists no transition of power at this juncture in our evolution, in the evolution of our weapons, in the evolution of our interconnectivity, economically speaking. There represents no transition of power that doesn't cost the lives of, hundreds of millions of people. And does that mean that Donald Trump's activities inevitably lead to this? No. No, we have no idea where this is going. That's the scary part. But as a person who understands international theory, international relations theory, foreign policy, you have to pause and consider the ramifications and the potential outcomes. We ended up on the idiocracy timeline. Somehow or another, we ended up in a world where Kim Kardashian is our best hope for prison reform. We ended up in a world where Dennis Rodman is literally the linchpin for denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. Stranger things are happening. So it is not a it's not a far cry to consider the possibility of Canada actually becoming an enemy of the United States because of what Donald Trump does. And because of how long he may be able to do it if he gets 4 more years. And for what reason? One of his friends? There are stranger things in history. We've gone to war. In history, the wars have been started for stranger reasons. And it's not a far cry. It's not a illogical or irrational thought experiment to consider a possible outcome where the world rearranges and the United States is the pariah, alienated from everyone except for North Korea and Russia. And then what? Let's say that happens and no actual war ensues, and my concerns of a massive world order changing war are unfounded and doesn't happen. Have we made the world any better by aligning ourselves with North Korea and Russia? And for many of you, you're like, Ben, what? This is a ridiculous conversation. Why do you even have to have it? Because I've learned my lesson. I honestly have. You can't be silent when you see stupidity evolving. You got to destroy it in its early stages and let people know, listen, you do not sit idly by and think nothing of global changing possibilities happening and developing right before our eyes. It is a very significant thing to watch as Donald Trump uses Twitter to realign the entire world order, to take America from our allies and to align us, and advocate on behalf of Russia, which, again, as I said earlier in the episode, is not inherently a bad thing. The question is, at what cost? What does it cost us to have an alliance with Russia? Because it's not just something that happens and say, oh, we're on this side now. No, there are actual material, tangible costs to this. And that represents actual material, tangible costs to people, to lives, to families, to real people. Just like we're concerned about the lives that American empire impacts right now. How could you bat your eye and turn a blind eye to the potential outcome of the course that we're currently on? Notwithstanding the fact that this is just a tremendously important period in geopolitical consideration in foreign policy. It's a significant period in international relations theory. To understand what's happening right now is critical. And it's not something that we could just say, oh, well, the post-war order was bad for me. Was it bad for you? It was bad for me. So, hey, Donald Trump, do your thing. My God, there has to be more consideration that goes into this as we analyze this from the left. But again, I'm done. I swore that I was not going to punch left anymore. I'm going to punch right as hard as I can, all the way right. I'm going all the way right to the Jordan Petersons of the world. But still, I swear for God, we can't let stupidity run amok. And for those of you who actually, sent those types of tweets to me, is it that I'm calling you stupid? No, I'm calling your approach to this extremely stupid and uninformed and completely callous to the potential outcomes and the potential costs to the lives of everyone, right? We're talking about the lives of I'm not talking about every American. No, I'm talking about every person on this planet being affected by the outcomes of what Donald Trump is engaging in right now. And the possible outcomes do include an unimaginable war between the United States and our former allies. Ben, you're being extreme. You're fear-mongering. My friends, as I already stated, we are now on the most idiotic timeline imaginable. Wherefore dost thou think it is unreasonable to consider an extreme outcome at this point? And then to consider the fact that it could be as a result of one of Donald Trump's friends in the dairy industry, who now has the most powerful man in the world doing him a favor. And that's all the time I have for you today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. It's always a pleasure. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron today. You've been listening to me for years, right? You driving the car, you've been listening to me for a while. Why not become a patron? Patreon.com/the BPD show. That's all the time I have. I will see you this week. Take care.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.